Blessings, good evening. I have a few questions to answer tonight. The first being, Dear Ajahn, I have some anxiety with unknown timing. For example, if taking a test in class, I need to know how much time I have for the questions. Another example, and relating to meditation, is if a teacher says, we will meditate until you hear the sound of the bell, my anxiety will be stronger than if a teacher says, we will meditate for half an hour. In my culture, completing things in a timely manner is sometimes here often. Another statement is hurry up and get that done. It's something you hear often. Do things in a timely manner or else hurry up and get it done. I have had this issue with time for much of my life and I hope to reduce its prevalence and eventually eliminate it. Can you advise, please? Yep, go and live with a teacher like Luang Por Chah or Luang Por Anand, and you'll gradually give up all thoughts about time. Many great meditation masters, they don't only chant that Dhamma is akaliko and timeless, they live it as well, and you just never know what's going to happen. So you get used to that, and then you give up worrying about the whole thing. I quite often quote Luang Por Anand in his earlier years at the monastery when the Sangha was very small. We would have meetings, regular meetings of the Sangha, but you wouldn't know sometimes how long it was going to last. In the evening, sometimes we would sit for 45 minutes, sometimes we'd sit for 2 or 3 hours. In the morning we would sit meditation when we came back from alms round, before the food was distributed for the meal, and before we had a meal. We would sit meditation together, sometimes again for half an hour, 45 minutes, on an empty stomach, very tired, sometimes for 1 hour, sometimes for 2 hours, before the meal was distributed and eaten. And you just never knew what would be coming. And other teachers the same. Anyone who lived with Ajahn Chah picked this up, not to be too rigid with time, although everyone understands that time frames and schedules are useful, especially if you live together as a group of people, like in a monastery. So you would still have times and schedules, but there was also this sense that sometimes the schedule would not be followed. And that could refer to meetings like for meditation, or even when you were going to eat the meal. Ajahn Chah, famous for his style, was before the meal he would often be talking to lay visitors who came and brought food to the monastery. Often they travelled a long way, went to a lot of effort, so he'd give them some time and teach them before the monks gave the blessing together and then ate the meal. And the Sangha of many monks, maybe 70 monks, would be sitting there while Luang Por Chah talked to the lay people. And even though the time for the meal was usually set at 8 a.m, Luang Por Chah might talk longer than that, easily, for another 15 minutes, half an hour, who knows. And the monks would sit there with their empty stomach, tired, nodding, struggling, trying to maintain mindfulness, not knowing when Ajahn Chah would end his conversation and give the blessing, which would then signal the meal. So it was often a welcome thing when Luang Por Chah stopped talking and gave the blessing. Before he stopped talking, he would often clear his throat. Having talked to the lay people, he would clear his throat and then give a blessing. So the clearing of the throat was very loud and kind of wake everybody up, because they're trying to keep awake on an empty stomach. It's hot, tired. So they'd hear him clear his throat and be excited, now it's time for the meal. And most of the time that did happen. He'd clear his throat and then start the blessing, and everyone stood to it or sat to attention and got ready to join in the blessing. But occasionally he'd clear his throat and then carry on talking. Almost as if he was doing it on purpose, and who knows, maybe he was. So he'd clear his throat, everyone's ready for a blessing, and then you're going to get your meal, and then he'd carry on talking. So some people, when the conversation continues, you just sag down again. Just giving you an insight into how exciting food is for people. You know, it can literally make you sit up straight when you know you're going to get fed. And when you know you're not going to get fed, you collapse down into a crumpling heap. So you learn to, in his monastery and monasteries, you learn to not get too caught up or too attached to timing. Also, a lot of things were done by bells. So the one bell which would always be on time, unfortunately, was the morning wake-up bell at 3 a.m. And sometimes it'd wake you up and you'd wish that the bell ringer had slept in, and that was one bell that came a bit later than usual, but it never did. It was the one bell that was always on time. The idea is, with this anxiety about time, whether it's bells or schedules or activities, you use these times and schedules as conveniences, as agreed kind of conventions, and that's what they're for. But you also have to be aware of the uncertainty and impermanence and unpredictability of life as well. And they go together, so you know that the bell will probably go at a certain time, but it's not sure. There will probably be meditation for a certain period of time, but it's not sure. Things will probably happen according to a timetable, schedule, but it's not sure. And that's what Ajahn Chah and all the great meditation masters teach, is that things are not sure, and sometimes they actually do things to show you that. So like one year I was staying in a monastery, a branch monastery of Ajahn Biak, and I was expecting to spend the rains retreat, 3 months rains retreat in that monastery, and I had my accommodation, and there was a few monks staying there, and everything was going along fine. And then the day before the beginning of the 3 months rains retreat, Ajahn Biak arrived and said, "Get your things together, we're going back to his monastery, 200 kilometers away." So I had literally an hour's notice to get my possessions together and move 200 kilometers. That's very typical of the monk's life. You sometimes are told at the drop of the hat to move and go somewhere else, and plans change and things are uncertain. So much as we love to stick to our time frames and time schedules, you also learn just to go with the flow, as they say, and sometimes that means doing unpredictable things, whether it's, a work project comes up when you want to meditate, or the work ends and you're told to meditate when you weren't expecting it. Everything can change. And you have to get to know your own mind, see where your weaknesses are. So if you're very attached to the schedule or the time frame, contemplate that. Maybe that's a cause of suffering and you need to loosen that attachment. You hold on to the time frame, the sound of the bell, the time, the clock, but at the same time you don't hold so tightly that if things are unpredictable or change on you, you get upset, because no one wants to be upset. That's where your reflection on impermanence and your establishment of mindfulness helps you in that situation. And maybe you ask your friend, what time will the meeting be today, or what time will the meditation finish, and your friend will just shrug their shoulders and say, not sure. So you get used to that in the monasteries. Obviously in the lay life sometimes it's not always that easy to deal with the unpredictable, because it can involve jobs and money and health and safety and all of that. And the way of the world now is to become more and more controlling and tightly controlling everything. You've got to punch your clock as you go to work, finish work on time, or maybe do free overtime. The world is not always a kaliko. Sometimes the world is very fixed, and then people get very stressed by it, don't they? So just keep reflecting on the anxiety, that suffering. Keep looking at where it may be coming from. Maybe you're just uncomfortable with the unknowing of something. When's it going to finish? When's it going to start? Remind yourself maybe it doesn't matter. It's not if it's not a life and death situation. Just try to accept. Sometimes we don't know. It's not sure. Get more familiar with reflecting on that to counter the anxiety. Accept the uncertainty in things sometimes. If it's a small thing, it really doesn't matter, then you really need to let go, and you'll teach yourself. And if you do it enough, you will get used to letting go in those sort of situations. And maybe that will help improve your whole life. So try to be mindful, be aware of the uncertainty of things, relax. Don't, as Luang Por Sumedho says, don't create a problem out of it. If you're not sure when the bell is going to go, don't sit there getting upset or stressed about it. Just try not to create extra suffering for yourself. Dear Ajahn, people pray and make merit for the deceased, or on specific days after the passing of the person, such as day 7, day 49, or day 50, day 100, and then on the death anniversary every year. What are the reasons to pray and make merit on those days? Any instruction from Buddha, or just traditional belief? Well, a lot of the Buddha's instructions are quite general, and I think partly it's because he allowed for people's specific rituals and practices as long as they fit within the general framework of the Four Noble Truths, the Noble Eightfold Path. Some of the details can be worked out and discussed between individuals, and they don't necessarily go against the Buddhist teachings, but sometimes it's just convenience. And a lot of our rituals, traditions, customs have come about in that way, I think. And the Buddha himself was living in India when there was a lot of rituals and customs. Some of them could be adapted and fitted quite easily into the Buddhist teachings and Buddhist practice. If it was something more specifically against the spirit or the rules of the Buddhist teachings, well then maybe he might criticize it, such as making animal sacrifices or being too superstitious about dates and times maybe. But often things to do with like funerals and the passing of someone, perhaps one of the priorities, which is in line with what the Buddha taught, is to get family, friends together to make merit for the dead. And it's convenient to do that on a certain day. If you have a tradition, we all come together for funerals on the 7th or the 49th or 15th day, whichever day it is, according to your tradition, that can be a skillful thing. It gets a lot of people together to do something that's quite wholesome. That may involve making merit with offerings, taking precepts, listening to talks, listening to chanting, meditating for the dead. And if everyone's doing it on a different day and it's kind of confusing for everyone, especially in this day and age where everyone's got jobs and all kinds of other commitments, then that can make life difficult. But if you have a day where you know it's going to be a certain day and everyone agrees on that, well then maybe that's quite convenient for a large group of people. So some sort of rituals and things come about in that way, through convenience. Some is also based on sort of understandings that when people die, assuming you accept that consciousness leaves the body but then is reborn in another realm, rebirth, then you may understand that sometimes consciousness dies, the person dies, and their consciousness, their mind, is very attached to what they're leaving behind. Very attached to their family, friends, loved ones, body, house, possessions, land, all kinds of things, which often pulls the mind of the dead one, the deceased, back. And so we get this awareness that sometimes people die and then they're hanging around as a ghost. It's not that they haven't been reborn, it's just they're a ghost hanging around, closely associated with the living and the place where they live maybe. And sometimes making merit for them can help, for them to move on to a better life, future life. So you get merit-making ceremonies come up, and often they're done on a certain day. Just that becomes the tradition. Doesn't mean to say you can't make merit on another day. You can make merit on any day. You can share the fruits of your good practice, dedicate them to the dead on any day. But for society, often certain days and rituals and customs can be very useful, skillful means. And that's how they should be used. And sometimes you have to adapt. So if you can't make it all on the 7th day and you do it on the 8th day, I think that's good as well. And it's not the end of the world, or the merit is not necessarily diminished. More important is your state of mind, your compassion for the dead, your keenness to make merit, do something wholesome. In the end, whatever day that you do something good is a good day, isn't it? So we can use these frameworks, the days, the dates of, say, rituals associated with funerals and the dead. But also, if you have to adapt a little bit, I don't think it's the end of the world. Most important is keeping your good intention. So you make merit and dedicate it. The idea is that the ghost, if they're in a position to know what's happening, and maybe they're not, maybe they are, maybe they're not, you can't be sure. But if they were, they would rejoice. They'd be happy that people are making merit, doing good things in their name. And there's a connection there with the living, and there's a happiness, a peace, a happiness arising in the mind of the ghost that leads them to improve their state of mind, which can sometimes lead to a better rebirth. In the same way as, say, you're very gloomy, miserable about something, depressed, upset, sad, angry, and you go maybe to a monastery, for example, but not only. You go, say, to a monastery and there's a merit-making ceremony in the monastery, but you're alive, you're not a ghost. You go and join in. There's some chanting, some offerings, some teaching, some meditation perhaps. At the end of all that, you feel uplifted, joyful. That's the value of making good karma or making merit. It can uplift people. It has a cleansing effect, cleansing you of the darkness of more negative moods, replacing that with brightness. And in certain situations, the brightness can literally lead to rebirth out of a certain realm. Just like when your gloomy, unhappy mood, your sad mood, through your practice, your efforts, your own efforts, or sometimes through support from others, can lift. and it's as if you're reborn into a better state of mind in that situation. If you observe your own mind through your life, how that can happen, then you may understand better how it can happen for ghosts, for being people who passed away, and how the passing of merit, the dedication of merit can help them. Of course, the Buddha said Sangha are a field of merit, meaning a very fertile place to make merit. So making merit with Sangha, who keep the Vinaya, meditate, follow the teachings, they often have very good energy, clear, strong, wholesome intentions in their mind. You make merit such as making offerings and other activities with Sangha, often that's some of the best quality merit to help the dead. So making merit with Sangha is highly recommended. But you would probably say I'm biased because I'm a monk, so perhaps you need to hear from a third party. Dear Ajahn, you always smile. Is this the outcome of cultivating Dhamma? I think smiling can trigger feelings of happiness for oneself and other people looking at you. So smiling can also make merit. Do you agree? Does Dhamma teaching mention about smiling impact? I still haven't read the sutra on smiling, but if you study the Abhidhamma, they talk about all the 89 or 121 different kinds of consciousness. One of them is what we call the Hasitupada Citta, which is the citta, the consciousness of a smiling Buddha. To be precise, the Buddha only half smiles. There's a smile, but it's not like ha 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 ha. Although I wasn't there, so maybe the Buddha did laugh a bit, I don't know. But he did have a half smile. This is documented, remembered, believed. He had a half smile in response to various situations. Maybe a point of Dhamma brought the half smile. Some special knowledge, often to do with psychic powers, can bring a half smile. And that usually prompts someone like Ananda, "Oh, Venerable Sir, why are you smiling?" And then you get an answer or an explanation. So even the Buddha would smile. I think everyone else, or mostly everyone else, would smile, but maybe not all the time. Depends on character, doesn't it? So there's probably some monks and nuns are more smiley than others. Whenever I imagine Venerable Mahakassapa, I always imagine probably doesn't smile a lot because he's quite stern, and he might tell monks off or rebuke Venerable Ananda if Ananda was doing something not quite right. You get the feeling he's probably generally quite stern, but I'm sure he had his moments too. A bit like some of the forest ajahns in Thailand. Some of them were very stern, you hardly ever saw them smile, but they could if they needed to. Someone like Ajahn Mahabur or Lumpur Cha, he definitely didn't smile all the time. He could be very stern, very kind of, have his classic face of non-self, not smiling, not angry, but just very kind of firm and almost like there's no one there. We call it the empty face or the face of non-self. One monk I knew quite a lot when I was a younger monk, Lumpur Put Tanio, he actually told me that when he was a young monk he realized he had a tendency to chuckle and be a bit too unrestrained through laughing and joking about different things. So he undertook, once he was practicing meditation, he did a lot of scholarly work the first few years as a monk, but then he got into his meditation. He was doing many hours of meditation every day and attained, we believe, jhana, magga, phala, went very far in his practice all the way to arahant. But one of the rules he made for himself, which is not from the Buddha or the Vinaya, it's just his own practice of mindfulness and restraint in daily life was that he wasn't going to laugh or smile. He just kept a normal face, and he took that on as a practice. So sometimes people mistook him for being angry, not caring, because he's practicing equanimity. But actually it was a deliberate training not to indulge in laughter and jokes too much, because he felt that was a cause for mental proliferation, craving, attachment, a weakness. So he trained himself not to laugh and smile. But he was actually a very pleasant monk to be with, and he talked, and he was certainly not gruff or rude or unkind or uncaring. And I spent time with him, so I felt I understood what he was doing. It's just teaching himself to be cool, calm, collected, but not laughing and smiling. As far as I go, I guess it's a character thing. I smile a lot. Also, people seem to have so much suffering these days that they need to be smiled at, so smile a bit. I don't smile all the time. My problem is I smile quite a lot, and then people sometimes, when I don't smile, they think there's something wrong. So I'm just sitting there ordinary with nothing particularly to smile about. They go, "Ajahn, what's wrong?" Or, "Ajahn, are you all right? Are you ill? Are you tired?" I said, no, I'm just not smiling. So this is a problem for me, but I'll deal with that, don't worry. It's not a big problem. But generally smiling does help people to relax, friendly, sign of friendliness. And perhaps we need that in the world today. I guess it's time and place. You can't smile if someone's, having an operation or something. There's a time and place for it, but generally it's helpful, isn't it? When people are tense, upset, need to be relaxed a bit, maybe it can help a bit. You have to be careful with animals, because when you smile, you show your teeth, and that sends a message to animals sometimes that you're about to eat them. So if you smile at kangaroos, sometimes they get confused and you see them looking at you, what's he up to? And you're smiling and they think, is he about to attack me and eat me? So be careful. Next question. Dear Luang Por, breathing in, I feel my breath going in. Breathing out, I feel my breath coming out. Are we using feeling to block sanya, perception, and sankhara, mental formations, from manifesting? Is this known as anapanasati, mindfulness of breathing? Well, how do you know your breath? In the end, you can only know it through any movements you detect, and then sensations caused by the movement. So a movement of air in, you've also got the movement of lungs expanding, so there's some muscle movement. There's probably a very subtle intention, isn't there? If you stop breathing, after a while you want to breathe because you want to keep alive. So there's a mental part of it perhaps, although very subtle. More importantly and more useful maybe for the meditation is the sensation of breath coming in, being drawn in, some muscle movement, and then air drawn in, and it touches your nostrils. Maybe that's why we teach to pick up that feeling at the top of your lip and your nostrils, air coming in, noticing the quality of the air, whether it's cool or warm, polluted sometimes, smells as well. But just basically that the air is rushing in. You fill your lungs, so sometimes when you do follow it in, lungs fill, abdomen rises. You can follow the whole process of air coming in, air going out, and you get really familiar with all of that. And there's points of contact. The chest, there's a point of movement, abdomen, point of movement. But as you refine your awareness and do it more and more, you want to stay in one place and pick one point. So I usually encourage people to try the tip of the nostrils, but it's not the only point you can focus on. When you're at one point, you don't need to follow the air in and out anymore. You just notice going in, so you know this is the in-breath. You become familiar with the movement, the sensation, what's going on. This is the out-breath, you know that. Whether you're breathing long or short, you know that. You notice your breath, the rhythm changes, it speeds up, slows down, the length can change over time. So if you keep coming back to that one point, being mindful of the in-breath, the out-breath, that feeling or sensation becomes very clear to you. Over time, it often merges into just one kind of coolness of keeping your attention in the one spot, and the breath itself tends to become more and more subtle because you're just sitting still. The longer you sit still, the more relaxed, the more calm body and mind are. This movement of the breath becomes more and more subtle until it's just one pointedness, and there's a kind of cool unification of awareness, body and mind in one place. Sometimes that becomes very clear, so even if you move around or do other things, you're staying with that clear, cool awareness in one place. So maybe if you're moving around, it would be quite hard to be aware of the subtle movement in and out of the breath, but the coolness of having established one-pointedness, you can keep aware of that as you do other things, walking, working, doing things. So that's something to become familiar with as you practice more. And of course, eventually maybe you completely lose awareness of all the body and the sensations, and you stop thinking about sounds, and your eyes probably are closed. Your eyes, when you become peaceful, your eyes tend to look downwards, but you're not looking at anything anymore. Now you're just aware of the mind itself. It seems like mind and body are almost separate. So these are all stages of the practice of mindfulness, of breathing, and accompanied by various understandings, maybe becoming aware of the impermanence of thoughts and feelings arising, passing away. Like you say, sanya sankhara, which normally fills our mind, all kinds of perceptions, liking, disliking, thought formations, ideas, linking ideas together, whether you're consciously doing it or it's just happening. All of that you become much more aware of, and you start to see impermanence, see cause and effect. And the sense of a self doing all this maybe starts to fade, and it's more like there's this quality of just observing or knowing, but without a self promoting it all and doing it all. So the mind gets a good rest from that sense of self. A lot of the mental chatter stops. So you see all kinds of changes that can both give you awareness of what samadhi is like, the calm, concentrated mind, but also gives you insight into impermanence, into dukkha, seeing the movements of the mind and how disturbing they are, and anatta, seeing cause and effect, and seeing how if you keep developing this mindfulness and the reflective power that go together, I mean this is over time practicing, sense of self seems to disappear, and you experience more of what we call emptiness or spaciousness, the emptiness of mind, where you're just knowing without creating a self in that knowing. So keep going with your practice, and you learn as you go. Dear Ajahn, most recently you gave a guided meditation speaking about as your meditation guidance was coming to a close, you shared for the listeners to continue on with the practice until the sound of the bell. There is something that raises some anxiety in me. Similar question. as for many years my working life needed to be done in a timely manner. Oh, sounds like the same question. And classroom testing was often timed. I've noticed this anticipatory anxiety in my adult life when wanting to know how long a situation would take. Another example today is, how long does it take to drive there? You're one of the school of, are we there yet? Are we there yet? How long will the program be? Etc. Well, with the question, are we there yet? What's the answer? We'll get there when we get there. Which is another way of saying it's not certain, who knows, no one can answer, so stop asking. You have to do that to yourself, don't you? If there's no answer to be had, stop asking. Just pause, put it on hold and say, I can't answer this question. If there's no immediate danger or it's not life-threatening, we have to learn how to live with a bit of that uncertainty, don't we, as I was saying earlier. And in meditation, if you really get into it, and that's probably not in a meditation class where because you've got many people and you do have to have a start and a finish normally, unless it's a group of monks, like I was saying with some of the teachers, they can play around with not conforming to a time frame. But if you're on your own and you're practicing, then sometimes you also have to learn how to do this for yourself. If your mindfulness is quite strong, your effort is quite strong, you're fairly peaceful, you're enthusiastic, things are going well and you have no pressure, no need to stop for any particular reason, sometimes you should really take it by the reins and just keep meditating, maybe longer than you planned. I mean, most people meditate with a plan, I'm going to sit for 30 minutes or 1 hour or whatever it is. And generally that might be good. But sometimes you should just sit, and if you're strong enough, you just keep going and say, no, today I'm just going to sit and sit and sit. And every time the thought to get up and do something else comes, I'm going to ignore it. Even if you get to the point where your mind is saying, I can't sit anymore. That's another thought, that's another desire. Sometimes you have to learn to let go of even that desire. When you feel like you're in too much pain or you can't stand it anymore, you're bored, you're restless, your mind's throwing up excuses to tell you to do something else, you don't follow any of those thoughts, you just watch them arise and cease. Those are the moments you often have breakthroughs where your mind and body become very peaceful, more peaceful than before. A lot of letting go is taking place, a lot of good qualities come up, and sometimes you can attain a much deeper, more profound state of samadhi than before, because you ignored everything. As I said, if there's really no danger, life-threatening situation, sometimes it's okay to do that. One of the ones monks do often is like, it's time for the meal, and they're sitting in their kuti and they just don't get up to go for the meal. Or it's time for the evening drink, which can be quite an attractive part of the day if you like your drink and you don't get an evening meal, but you don't get up and go for that, you just keep meditating. So sometimes you have to have that boldness and recognize maybe this is a good time just to keep sitting, or walking meditation can do it as well. And you yourself don't conform to whatever plan or time frame you had, and you just go beyond it. And very occasionally this may actually happen naturally when you're peaceful and so absorbed in your meditation you really forget time. And when you're very peaceful, often you get to experience the timelessness of the Dhamma, and you sometimes feel you've only been sitting 10 minutes and then you look at a clock, eventually you stop, you come out of your meditation, you look at the clock, you realize, oh, it was 2 hours. Sometimes you get a pleasant surprise, sometimes only then you think of something you should have been doing, it's like, oh no. I've had this over the years in a few different situations where so peaceful, you didn't get up and didn't even remember what the time was or what things are going on. So then when you come out of samadhi, start thinking again, it's like, oh, I missed that. But if you miss something because of you're deep in samadhi, most sympathetic Buddhists wouldn't blame you or get upset. Even for monks, the Buddha said there's only one thing you really need to come out of your samadhi for, and that's the recitation of the monk's rules, what we call the patimokkha. Even if you're really good at samadhi and you can enter the most deepest state of jhana, or what we call nirodha samapatti, the cessation of perception, you still have to come out of that and go to the patimokkha. No excuses. But other things maybe you miss. So you miss the meal, or you miss some other activity. So anyway, that's the end of the session today, and we'll talk next time.